Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. I'm Jordan, a 32-year-old web developer working remotely, and I recently had to make a tough call. I called off my engagement with Brenda, 28 female. It was a hard choice, but I felt it was necessary. To give you some context, my childhood was a series of tragedies. At 8, I lost my mom, and my father, rather unfairly, blamed me for her death just because I wished for a sibling the previous Christmas. This led to years of constant abuse and punches, and in a twisted way, I partly blamed myself for the ordeal. I never reported my father, and when I turned 18, I decided enough was enough, packed my bags and left his house. Since then, I've poured my heart into building a life I could be proud of. For some strange reason, I've been fixated on creating a family that loves me, maybe as a way of rewriting my painful past. I got the chance to do that when I met Brenda 2 years ago. Brenda is a divorcee with a 10-year-old son, Jason. Despite the initial reservations Jason had about our relationship, I dedicated time and effort to winning him over with gifts and reassuring gestures. Brenda's ex-husband had visitation rights, which meant that Jason stayed with him during the weekends. Although I sometimes felt like a third wheel during these times, I was okay with the idea of a father wanting time with his son, and I learned to go along with it. My life was playing out like a sweet romance movie, and Brenda and I got soon engaged. However, Brenda lost her job a month later, and to manage the bills, she proposed that she and Jason move in with me. Given the circumstances and our impending marriage, it felt like a natural step to offer my support. Besides, my apartment was spacious enough to accommodate all of us. Shortly after, Brenda and Jason settled into my apartment. Brenda landed a job that kept her away for most of the day, and I somehow got the unexpected role of being the primary caretaker for Jason. Although she argued that it didn't pay much, I encouraged her to continue, as I would provide for her and Jason. Initially, everything appeared to be smooth sailing. It all felt like we were one big happy family. But it didn't take long till I began noticing unsettling behaviors from Jason when his mom wasn't around. The first red flag appeared when small amounts of money mysteriously vanished from my wallet. Not wanting to prematurely jump to conclusions, I refrained from immediate confrontation. I gave him the benefit of the doubt, thinking he was too shy to ask for money and perhaps needed it for something important. But it became a habit until I had to keep my wallet properly hidden. But the missing cash situation extended beyond my wallet. My personal belongings, from my keys to my favorite pen to my AirPods, began to disappear. Confused and frustrated, I turned to Brenda for support. But she dismissed the situation, suggesting I must have forgotten where I placed them. The situation kept getting worse. It was as if Jason had brought a manual on how to push my buttons. Initially, I chalked it up to typical prepubescent behavior, thinking boys being naughty was par for the course. However, my assumption proved to be painfully wrong. Aside from killing my pet fish with blue dye, which he somehow thought was fish food, a lie that I didn't believe as the label was visible, Jason would reject meals, even the ones I painstakingly prepared for him, and wait till Brenda returned so he could complain about how I supposedly starved him. Brenda, in turn, seemed deaf to my side of the story, quickly concluding that I wasn't father material due to my childhood experiences. She even made light of it, joking about teaching me to be the perfect family man. Irritated, I chose to overlook it, thinking this was just a passing phase. Jason's behavior reached a point where living under the same roof became almost unbearable. He would blast music from his room despite my pleas for some peace so I could work. One afternoon, frustration got the better of me and I barged into Jason's room, unplugging the blaring speakers and confiscating them. I reported the situation to Brenda once she returned, but instead of talking to Jason about it, she silently entered our room, retrieved the speakers, and handed them back to Jason. Attempts to explain my side of the story were met with Brenda brushing it off, citing a headache, and promising to discuss it later, but we never did. The next day, I was engrossed in my work when I noticed an unusual silence in the house. I found Jason in the living room, seemingly occupied with origami. I thought it was an opportunity to connect with him and apologize for the previous day. Armed with chocolates, I approached him, intending to reassure him of my good intentions. But to my horror, I discovered he was cutting up important documents that I had been anxiously waiting for weeks before they were mailed to me. I was furious. I snatched what was left of the documents from him and flared up. I demanded an explanation as to why he would do something like that, and it was at that exact moment that Brenda came back home. Instead of addressing the gravity of the situation, she, in a typical superhero mom fashion, sided with her son. I tried explaining the importance of the documents, but Brenda somehow managed to make it my fault. According to her, I should have been more careful with my belongings, given the presence of a child in the house. To add insult to injury, she warned me never to raise my voice at Jason because I wasn't his dad. She said that if I could yell at Jason like that, I could also hit him like my father hit me. To say I was livid is an understatement. Later that night, Brenda, with an audacity that astounded me, even had the nerve to ask for money to buy new shoes for Jason. I had to bite my cheeks hard to stifle any incredulous laughter. Without hesitation, I firmly told her no. After all, I wasn't Jason's father. Brenda, instead of seeing my perspective, flipped out and started yelling. Accusations flew, asserting that I wasn't making an effort to be a father figure for Jason. She suggested therapy as a way for me to overcome the life-changing trauma of my childhood. For a moment, I said nothing. Then I quietly informed her I couldn't proceed with our marriage and asked her to leave my house as early as possible the next day. Of course, another round of yelling started, but this time I didn't try to explain myself. I plugged in the earmuffs that I had purchased because of Jason's incessant music and went to sleep. Brenda kept cussing and swearing at me as she packed her things. She tried to guilt-trip me by mentioning that she practically had nowhere to go, and she was even with a 10-year-old, but I was unfazed. Maybe Jason needed to be homeless for a while for character building. Thinking the drama was finally behind us, Brenda took her grievances to Facebook and created a fictional tale where my traumatic childhood turned me into a villain who was projecting onto her poor son. The story gained momentum as people love a good sympathetic narrative, especially if it involves a woman. I tried my best to brush it off, but it took a toll and cost me a few gigs with clients who had heard the story. It wasn't until a week ago that Brenda called me begging for forgiveness. Apparently, Jason didn't think it would ever escalate like this, and he confessed to doing all those things to intentionally piss me off so his mom would remarry his dad. I was speechless. In a bid to make amends, Brenda deleted her posts on social media and replaced them with a public apology, publicly acknowledging the wrongs and pleading for me to accept her and Jason back into my life, as Jason was just being petty. Even Jason joined her to beg, claiming he made a mistake and he knows now that he was wrong. Now I'm torn between letting them back into my life and starting the family I've always wanted, and maintaining distance for my peace of mind and sanity after all the drama they caused. Update: Brenda has been at my door every day for a week now, begging me to forgive her and Jason as they have nowhere to go. She says she was only looking out for her son, and if she doesn't find a place, Jason could possibly be taken from her. Although I understand her selfish reasons, I don't think I want her back into my life. Today, I handed her a restraining order and warned her not to contact me again. Not only did she never listen to me or take my side when I complained about Jason's behavior, she also went ahead to insult and embarrass me physically and on social media. I wished her good life and advised her to focus on herself and her son, and then I went back inside and shut my door. You did the right thing, OP. In this situation, your fiancée was just as horrible as a son. She wasn't a good mother and she wasn't a good partner either. Indirectly, she ended up feeding into her son's destructive behavior. Jason continued to taunt you and be awful to you because he was sure his mother would take his side instead of finding out what was wrong. As your partner, she should have trusted you more and brought up your past childhood trauma less. Just because your father was horrible doesn't mean you are or you want to be horrible. For your peace of mind, it's better to part ways with both son and mother, because even though they claim to be sorry, that doesn't mean old issues won't spring up again. Take care, OP. Story 2. So, my mom and dad divorced when I was a baby, and I have no real memory of them together. My mom remarried. My stepdad had 3 girls of his own, 10, 7, and 5. My mom had full custody of me and I visited my dad often while my stepdad had full custody of his daughters. But they visited their mom a lot too, but never for more than like 2 or 3 days. I know that every family has sibling struggles, but add on the fact I didn't look like them. I was an only child while they weren't, and just the fact that I plain and simple didn't get along with them just made everything bad. Our parents tried to mediate as much as they could, and to their credit, it did stop. But the underlying issues were that we all didn't like each other, and how I, or them for that matter, have never called each other sisters, or family, or any of that, and probably never will. I am currently 24 and live with my roommate while my stepsisters live with their dad at home. Except the stepsister who is my age. She has a young kid who I think turned 2. She lives near me and recently called me to ask if I could look after her son while she goes to the doctor's for her physical therapy session. I have met the kid like twice and haven't seen her since Thanksgiving and didn't really want to look after the kid. I told her to just go to one of her sisters or dad. They live close to just a little longer drive. She said she needed me to do this and how I need to get over the past between us because her kid hasn't done anything. I could just tell she was trying to guilt trip me and I just told her to ask one of her real sisters and hung up. My roommate who was in the same room told me that I'm being kind of melodramatic and should have just watched the kid. She said she would have helped too. Am I the a-hole? You're not the a-hole, OP. Your stepsister is allowed to ask you for a favor, but she should have prepared herself to be okay with you saying yes or no to the favor. Even though it sounds like she didn't ask very politely in the first place, you two don't have a relationship. I don't get why she would think you would say yes to watching her kid. Your roommate doesn't understand much about this. She didn't grow up with you, so, of course, she has a different take. But I don't think you're an a-hole for not babysitting her kid, especially if she asked like that. Story 3. We have some family staying with us for a funeral right now. We only have one guest room which my aunt and uncle took. My other aunt and uncle slept downstairs in the living room. It was decided that all their 5 kids would sleep in my room since it has the most floor space for air mattresses and its own bathroom so kids could go pee easily. They're all little, so I guess the hallway and the living room with the big glass doors was too scary at night. I wasn't a big fan of this idea, but I didn't have a choice. I have a loft bed though, so I had a little private space to myself. I don't go to sleep as early as them, so I was up in my bed playing video games. Around 11 p.m. someone turned on the lights. When I took off my headphones, I heard one of the kids screaming. I didn't really know what was going on, but my aunt and uncle took her out of the room. My mom and my other aunt got all the other kids to quiet down and go to bed, so I went back to my game and eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I found out that the cousin that was screaming had been trying to get my attention because she needed to pee, but was too afraid to use my bathroom because someone had turned off the light that was supposed to be left on for them. She saw that I was awake and was trying to ask me for help. When I didn't answer her, she tried climbing up the ladder to my bed. She fell and ended up dislocating her arm. Everyone wanted to know what happened and why I didn't help her. I said I didn't hear her because of my headphones. Everyone started ganging up on me, saying I should have known better than to wear noise-cancelling headphones since I babysit. My uncle is the most angry and said that I need to learn to use my effing head. But I babysit older kids, and no one even said I was babysitting, so I don't think it's fair for them to say it's my fault. Update. I told my dad about them all blaming me when he got home, and he told them it wasn't my fault or responsibility. We went out and had dinner just for us. When we got back, my aunts and one uncle were still mad, but I'm just going to ignore them like my dad said too, because they'll be gone soon anyways. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole, you weren't babysitting. Relatives dumped their kids in your room and expected you to take care of them. It was just an accident anyway. If they want to point fingers, they can go home and take responsibility for their own kids. Also, if you are supposed to be babysitting, tell your uncle what rates are and double them since they have you on duty overnight. Not the a-hole. It wasn't your responsibility considering you weren't told to babysit, and I'm sure you didn't even think about such a thing happening. They're lucky you're even cool with sharing your room in the first place. I don't think you're to blame, and they should have calmly had a conversation with you after the fact to ask you not to wear them again instead of ganging up on you. Not the a-hole. I'm really sorry to hear that the blame for this is being placed on you. It must be weighing very heavily on your conscience. But in my opinion, I don't think you are to blame at all. I think you are well within your right to have your own little space while you share your room. I think nearly every person on earth would put on headphones at night in that situation, including the people who are blaming you for it. Who is the person who turned off the light the kids were supposed to have on? No one's blaming them, no? Plus, people can't just bounce the responsibility of their kids off onto somebody without even explicitly asking first. It's not like you were asked and given instructions on precautions to take with the kids. Sucks what happened to the little one, but at the end of the day, shit happens. Kids get hurt, and like my granny always said, it will be gone before their wedding day.